Welcome to the Awesemo.com Live Sport Lock Show right here, as we are here to break down UFC Vegas number 20, which of course it's a Vegas card, which means we have gone through a lot of changes over the past couple of days since we did the strategy show. I believe since we did the strategy show, Pete, we have lost 2 fights because we lost a third fight prior to doing the strategy show. We started off the week at 12 fights. We're now down to 9 fights, which obviously makes it a little interesting when we're talking about roster construction. Angela Hill versus Ashley Yoder is the most recent fight to drop off this card due to COVID protocols. So we are going to talk about that. Of course, we are sponsored by Monkey Knife Fight, as all you got to do is go over to monkeyknifefight.com, as they are a player props based DFS type scoring system. So you got to go over check out our sponsor there, monkeyknifefight.com. With Monkey Knife Fight, you are in charge. Choose the game you want, your contest type, your buy-in, and they've even got a great deal for our audience. When you sign up with the promo code Awesemo, you'll get an instant first match deposit bonus up to $50. Sign up today, as we appreciate Monkey Knife Fight for their support here of the MMA product here at Awesemo.com. So, Pete, let's talk a little roster construction. Angela Hill versus Ashley Yoder. I think just based on the comments we were getting during the strategy show on Thursday, I feel like there's a lot of people are probably happy this fight's on the card, because I don't think many people were excited about potentially rostering Angela Hill at 9,200.
You know, I was kind of taking her in a contrarian stance. I think that it was an interesting matchup, but you know, her volume is kind of what was piquing my interest. I will say that, you know, with all the cancellations, this hasn't changed my thoughts on the fights or like how I feel some fights will go, but it definitely has changed my process for the slate, right? So I think, like, if you're looking at this entire slate and you're trying to get unique to take down, you know, a big field tournament, and you're trying to have that optimal lineup, I think you have to consider more than one underdog to get unique, right? Like, I'm definitely considering lineups with more underdogs than I was prior to these cancellations, because I felt pretty confident in some spots. But, you know, you said 9 fights. You have to mix it up in order to, you know, try and take down the tournament. So I have pieces of each fighter here. There's nobody that I'm ignoring, because, you know, I don't want to ignore the wrong fighter, ignore that one fighter that ends up popping and outproduces their salary. So I think it should just change your approach, especially if you're in a 150 max or a 20 max.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of trying to get different, I think you got to look at some of these bigger underdogs a part of this card, whether it's a Nikita Krylov. I mean, look, that is a GPP fight. I would be fairly shocked if that fight does go all 25 minutes. I believe the winner of that fight is going to win by finish. So if you think Nikita Krylov can pull it off, he's a guy that can help, you know, distance yourself from the field. I mean, look, you know, I think Rozenstruik will have decent ownership, just because of you understand that the winner of that fight is likely going to win by stoppage. You do kind of wonder if there's an early storm by Ciryl Gane, could potentially Rozenstruik, as the fight goes on, get a late stoppage. I mean, but there's some fights on this card, and I was just kind of looking at the betting odds right before we started the show, and, you know, looking at some, you know, inside the distance props, and fight goes to decision. You look at a fight like the Munoz Rivera fight, it's minus 250 to go to the decision. Now, that's a fight that if one of those fighters can pull off a stoppage win, that could help separate yourself from the field, because, you know, we talked about on Thursday, that's not a fight I love from a DFS perspective just because of styles. But if you tell me one guy's going to go out there and get a finish, I think it's Pedro Munoz.
Yeah, I love the topic that you just brought up, and it's locating spots where you can gain leverage over your opposition, especially in a large field tournament, right? Like, a lot of people are viewing that Rivera Munoz fight as kind of a 15-minute decision. Well, it's MMA, it's the apex, the action's going to be pressed, the cage is smaller, anything can happen. So that's why these matchups, like, it can go either way, as we see each week. But based on how the entire community is viewing that fight, you can gain some leverage by targeting that fight, whether it is Rivera or Munoz. I do agree with you in saying that Munoz probably holds the finishing edge, you know, based on his career statistics. Munoz in his career, 18 victories, 72% finish rate, whereas Jimmy Rivera, 23 victories, 26% finish rate. But it's not like Rivera doesn't have pop. It's not like he doesn't have skills in all areas of the fight. He does. He rocked Pedro Munoz in the previous bout. They both rocked each other. So if you go out there and tell me that this fight does not go the distance, I mean, it's 2021, Jason. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about, fights that could break the slate. And the more I've thought about it, and I think we tend to look at the underdogs in that equation. We tend to look at like an Alexis Davis, someone 7,300. Could she break the slate? We both mentioned about how we like Kevin Kroom at 7,400, but I started to look at some of these, favorites. And I mean, look, your ownerships are going to be up there because we only have 18 fighters to choose from tonight. But the one fighter I look at as a favorite that could break the slate because of his wrestling is Ronnie Lawrence.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean, like, if you really look at the favorites on this card, he's making his UFC debut. So obviously we are a little cautious with that. I mean, there's a lot going into a UFC debut. Yes, he looked great on the Contender Series, but it's amazing that when it's at your actual UFC debut, how the pressure gets to some people. But he clearly has a wrestling path to victory here. And we did see in Vince Cachero's previous bout against Jamal Emmers, he was taken down 5 times throughout the fight. And granted, Cachero took the fight on like a couple days notice and stepped up, in a weight class above his own to accept the fight. So I do think that Cachero will, give a better account of himself in this fight, especially with a full camp. And I don't want people to think that, the Cachero of old is kind of like the standard going forward. I do think that he has, okay skills in all departments, but I do favor Lawrence there. I think that he comes from a great camp at Sanford MMA. He looks to get underhooks quickly. He likes to chain wrestle. And whenever you have a guy chain wrestling, yes, you can defend the first and the second takedown. But what about the third and the fourth? And I just like the tenacity, the pace. I do favor Lawrence in the fight, but I was getting a decent amount of Cachero. Granted, it's 9 fights. So what do you expect?
Want to get your takeaways from the weigh-ins. Obviously, we had one fighter miss weight. That'd be Maxim Grisham missing weight by 4.5 pounds. I got a question earlier in Slack about that, asking, did I see that as a great advantage for Grisham, especially if he is able to make this a wrestling matchup? And I said, there's 2 ways to look at that. You can look at it as, oh, he's got this extra weight. But then I look at it and say, man, what if he just had an injury / bad weight cut, and all of a sudden he maybe only has 3 to 4 true minutes of a gas tank?
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, I think that fighters that miss weight had like a winning record at one point, like a pretty heavy winning record. And I think that we have seen some fighters, have terrible weight cuts and kind of suffer the effects of them. Now, it's impossible to really know, obviously, especially since he had a decent poker face at the weigh-ins. He obviously looked disappointed in himself, but physically he didn't look like, extremely soft. He looked thick, but it's not like I looked at him and said, wow, that's a bad weight cut. But as far as the grappling, stages of the fight, a heavier guy that'll obviously help. That's why there's weight classes, like weight classes for striking. You can have some lighter guys that can compete with heavier guys. But as far as grappling, like, it really comes down to, what are they both walking around at? What are they both at? And then skills, of course. But, I think that Grisham's a pretty good underdog. If you look at his career, in totality, 31-8 overall, 71% finish rate, does have a path to victory. But if we've seen anything from Dustin Jacoby, it does look like he's kind of like, he's reinvented his entire game. He has an amazing striking acumen now. Now he knows fighters are going to want to take him down. So I'm sure he's been working on it. I favor Jacoby heavily, but like I said, there's not an underdog on this card that I'm not considering. If I'm thinking about since you brought up the weigh-ins, I kind of just want to glance over a couple fighters that really impressed me. I mean, obviously Cachero looked a lot better on the scale this time around. He had a full camp. I will say that Hernandez and Moises both seem to be in phenomenal shape. I was impressed with Munoz's physique. I thought that he came in looking ripped, more than ever. But the one guy that really stuck out to me was Nikita Krylov. Nikita Krylov really put on a lot of muscle mass. Now, could that be detrimental to his performance? But I don't know. We'll have to see. But he did look like he took this fight extremely seriously. And he's facing off against a tough test in Ankalaev. So his path to victory should be via grappling.
Yeah, I mean, look, you expect that the Kia Krylov is going to win. It's going to be by stoppage. Appreciate everyone is here on a Saturday afternoon. This is live before lock, course. If you are not subscribed to Awesemo right here on YouTube, you got to subscribe to the channel so you know exactly when all the shows are live. Of course, when you hit that notification bell, you know when the show is live on the channel. And of course, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. We really do appreciate when you do that. Of course, coming up after us will be NBA Deeper Dive and NBA Live Before Lock to get you ready for tonight's NBA action. You know, one of the favorite terms we have here on the show is Takedown City. I mentioned about the potential of Ronnie Lawrence taking Vince Cicero to Takedown City. Who else could be going down to Takedown City tonight?
Okay, well, I mean, Rozenstruik could go to Takedown City, but not really. I mean, Gane likes to strike. Gane will strike and mix in takedown. So I don't really feel like he's going to just rely on the grappling, which I think he should if he wants like the easiest path to victory. If I am looking, I do think that Bueno Silva can get taken down pretty easily against Montana De La Rosa. De La Rosa's worked extensively on her hands, but those hands can disguise her strong grappling. And she closes the distance well, chains together takedowns, has a good top game. Just needs to be, wary of that armbar and, submissions off of Mayra Bueno Silva's back. So be careful there. Obviously, tread carefully. I have plenty of Montana De La Rosa. But the one fighter that I think could get taken to Takedown City, even though I'm favoring her, I think Sabina Mazo could get taken down to Takedown City against Alexis Davis. I think that Davis is an interesting underdog at 7,300. Granted, I'm favoring Sabina Mazo. But if we're talking about exposure, I do have exposure to Alexis Davis. She's 19-10 overall, has wins over some incredible competition in the UFC. And her strong parts of her game are her grappling, are her wrestling. How do you nullify a strong volume striker like Sabina Mazo? You put her on her back where she's not dangerous. That needs to be the game plan here, especially against a young and green opponent like Sabina Mazo. So I do think that Davis is interesting.
I'll just mention about Montana De La Rosa because, on the show, I've always talked about how you can use the betting odds to kind of help you in terms of your DFS analysis to see what the betting public thinks of a fight. And of course, you can go over to Awesemo.com and look at Odd Shopper to see what the odds are at various places. But as I'm looking at it, there are places where Montana De La Rosa is now the betting favorite, and where, seeing numbers where she's just a slight betting favorite. So as I say, I think that's always a key metric to look at when you're developing your lineups is, look at what the odds were when the bookmakers put it out there and then see how the betting public thinks of that fight. It can offer you some unique insight.
Yeah. I mean, I got Montana De La Rosa as an underdog. I went over state lines today and, I did some training. So I actually hit the sports book. So I'm interested. And I lit up the sports book with a bunch of different prop bets just to kind of have some fun with it and see where it goes. But Montana De La Rosa as an underdog, I think you can do worse than that.
By the way, go over to our Twitter account right now as we've got a flash giveaway going on. Just vote on and like the poll for UFC Vegas 20, and you are entered to win a free month of Awesemo Plus. Of course, you must follow our Twitter handle at Awesemo_com, plus also at Awesemo Odds and Awesemo MMA. So it is the pin tweet over there on our main Twitter account, which is at Awesemo_com. Moving on, punt options. You mentioned about Alexis Davis, and she was coming up a ton for me when I was doing my crunches a little bit earlier. Mentioned about Kevin Kroom. I like him. 7,400. I will say this: Sabina Mazo on FanDuel, I think, could be interesting if she's able to stop the takedowns of Alexis Davis. But when you think about these punt options, so if we're really talking punt options, we're talking Davis 7,300, Kroom 7,400, Rozenstruik 7,200, and Krylov at 6,900.
Yeah, I like all of them. I think that Krylov is interesting because we do have that dark cloud hovering over Ankalaev's head. I mentioned it on the strategy show of losing to Paul Craig in the final moments of the fight. So that's a mental lapse. Also, if you think about the weigh-ins, like Krylov looked impressive. So like he has a 27-7 record. He's not bad at all, but in his losses, he has been finished. I like Rozenstruik because it's a main event, and Ciryl Gane is only 7-0. What happens if he tires? Yeah, maybe he wins a couple rounds, but later on, does Rozenstruik kind of start to pull away? We'll have to see with that. But yeah, I think like if I'm looking, Thiago Moises is interesting. The reason why Thiago Moises is interesting is because like the entire industry, including myself, we like Alexander Hernandez. I think you like Alexander Hernandez. We like what he brings to the table, like his striking. We know he has good wrestling. We know he has strong grappling. So the chances of him being submitted are, somewhat slim. But if you think about that fight, Hernandez and Moises have been really inconsistent in the UFC, like 4-2 and 3-2, both winning records, but they're both coming off of like not career best performances, but like pretty close, where they had to really turn the corner in their career. So they're at a crossroads right now. So who really has the more momentum going forward? Is it Hernandez with the new coaching staff? I would lean that. But I do think that Moises, always being around American Top Team, arguably the best gym on the planet, surrounded by talent, coming off a big win against Bobby Green, despite probably not winning that on the scorecards. He's interesting because he's well-rounded. And what happens if Hernandez tires out? So I like I said, I'm targeting everybody, and I can make a case for everybody on this card.
Of course, if you want to get what we're seeing as the ownership projections, you got to sign up for an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $29.95. This gives you full access to all the premium tools and contents we have over at Awesemo.com, such as ownership projections, player projections, and also gives you access to our premium Slack account where myself and Pete will be in there during the fights. And if you just want an Awesemo Plus and May weekly package, you can sign up right now for $8.95. Just go to Awesemo.com/join to sign up today. And we do have a promo going on right now. You've been seeing it at the bottom of the screen for half off the first week of college basketball DFS. All you got to use is the promo code college to take advantage of this deal. $4.98 for the first week of college basketball DFS over there at Awesemo.com, as the team has been putting together a great package as March Madness is here. So use that promo code college to get a week of college basketball DFS for $4.98. Talking about the betting odds. So right before the show, I was, looking at the various betting odds for this one. And some more, looking at some line movements. I mentioned about Montana De La Rosa, kind of shows you a little bit about the betting public. I was looking at some prop bets that kind of, stuck out to me. Under 2.5 rounds on Jacoby Grisham plus 107. Hernandez inside the distance plus 325. Another prop bet on that one. Thiago Moses wins round 3. 15 plus 1525. I mentioned about the Rivera Munoz decision prop minus 250. Munoz inside the distance plus 300.
Jeez, man, you prop hunting. I love it.
It's called show prep over here. That's all. I'm just doing show prep.
Yeah, I mean, there's some good ones. I liked Angela Hill, via decision. I thought that fight was clearly going the distance and she would edge her out. I mean, you're talking about a minus 300 favorite that you could get at minus 100, but obviously that fight is off. I just think that a Montana De La Rosa money line is nice. I mentioned it in my article. I think that she is extremely she's in this fight. She's able to compete everywhere. I'm not impressed with Bueno Silva. I have some shares of Bueno Silva, but they're fewer than Montana De La Rosa. Jason, are you happening to play on FanDuel today? Are you extremely into FanDuel today or not so much?
I'm not big in the FanDuel today, no. I think I literally have a lineup and a satellite to win a ticket for a future card.
Yeah. As far as the FanDuel side, I do think that Sabina Mazo is a name to circle because she'll probably – I know that Alexis Davis isn't the best takedown artist, but she does have strong grappling, really good jiu-jitsu. So she will look to close the gap and put her down there. I guarantee it. If not, I mean, she doesn't wear damage well, so she's going to get lit up on the outside from the tall, rangy Sabina Mazo. That's just that's a recipe for a disaster right there. It's a smaller cage, clinch up, look to take her down. But I do think that 19 for Mazo on FanDuel is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the potential takedown attempts there. Mention this question because we're going to now get into the questions. First up, Sam over in our Slack account, he goes, would you say Rozenstruik is the champion play with that multiplier on SuperDraft? So he is a 2.3 times, 2.35 times multiplier, if I can say that correctly. It's an interesting multiplier. You know, look, I think if you tell me Ciryl Gane and Rozenstruik fight 10 times, I would probably think Gane's going to win 6 or 7 of them.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do think that's fair because, like, Rozenstruik has that power where he can just clip you, and it doesn't have to be the most clean shot. But, like, when has Ciryl Gane been hurt in the UFC? When has he? Yes, he's been cracked, but, like, I want to see him get hurt and then kind of overcome that adversity. And it's a good thing that he's not getting hit in the UFC. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's like a double-edged sword here. Like, he's so good that he doesn't get hurt. But in a way, I want to see him tested. So if Rozenstruik cracks him tonight and he seems and deals with it fine and he keeps moving forward, that's really promising going forward. But, like, I mean, the number on SuperDraft that you mentioned is absolutely insane for a guy in the main event slot. Like, I got no issues with that. I mean, he could pull a Derek Lewis and get it done. But I do think that Gane is the more well-rounded fighter and should win here.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about Nikita Krylov is 2.4 times, just kind of give you a little perspective on where that is. But, you know, look, if I'm looking at champion plays on SuperDraft, you know, if you're looking to get someone over a 2 times multiplier, I would probably say my favorite one would be Kevin Croom.
Yeah, I was thinking about Kevin Croom, right? Like, he likes to close the distance fast. He likes to really press the action. He's wild. I do think that James Krause, you know, under the tutelage of James Krause, can calm the beast down a little bit, you know, settle into the fight, you know, hit some power shots, maybe work on some slick submissions. But do you foresee that fight ending, or do you think that Croom kind of edges him out in a close contest?
I think if Croom wins, I believe it will be by stoppage.
Really? You don't think that he could?
I just think he's going to be constantly going for it.
Yeah.
Kevin's just not a guy that's going to be hunting. You know, he's hunting for the finish. Now, look, you know, when I spoke to him, you know, he talked about, he's like, look, you know, James Krause has helped change his game. He credits Grant Dawson a lot as well. He said, cool. He said back at the, in November of last year, before he got, so this would be 2019, where he mentioned about, you know, a turning point was a conversation he had with Grant Dawson, and he credits that Glory team for revitalizing his career and putting him in the position he's in now. I mean, he's just a guy that, you know, he's going to push that action. So that's why I like it there. CS, I appreciate you in the super chat. He says, I personally do not think the main event fits, but without 10 fights, is there a fight to stack in GPPs?
What's up, CS? What's going on? Well, a stack, right? A stack. What could work in a stack?
I don't know if it would score well, but just because I think it's going to go 15 minutes and I think it plays out on the feet, is it Pedro Munoz, Jimmy Rivera?
I knew you were looking at that.
But with that matchup, and when we talk about that new DraftKings scoring system, I concern myself what happens if it's a fight in the clinch, and all of a sudden now you're only getting 0.2 because there is no significant strikes. It's just total strikes, and does that allow you to get, you know, those points that you're looking for?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? You know, I made a bunch of lineups. I'm in a 150 max today. Obviously, with only 9 fights, it makes things difficult for all of us. We'll probably all be chopping at the top, which is, you know, there's worse problems than that. But to get unique, I do think that, you know, stacking could be interesting. It's just trying to figure out which fight to stack. I mean, I do think that Rivera Munoz, right? It's hard to stack a high and a low unless you really think that, like Gane and Rozenstruik, right? The 5 rounds is really the only reason why you think of that. But if you look at Rozenstruik's volume, it's really minimal. So what's the chances, even in a 5-round fight, if this is stretched out, how many strikes does he throw? Probably less than a active 135-pound fight like Rivera Munoz, where they're right close. Because look, if Rozenstruik does do well, does Gane still pay off that 9,000 tag? Like, it's a tricky thing to think about because a stack will only work if both fighters will pay off their salary. And I do think that the Rivera Munoz is one to target. It's a weight class that you like to target. Maybe it's the Lawrence and Cachero as well. But for me, I'm not big on stacking this week.
Jack brought up in YouTube, he said, mentioning about potentially stacking the main event in cash on DraftKings.
I don't know, man. I don't know why.
I'd be so fearful that it's a first round knockout, and that, I feel like if you want to stack the main event, your thought process has to be this fight is hitting at least the fourth round.
Yeah. I mean, it has to, right?
Yeah. Corey, I appreciate you in the super chat. He says, one bullet, 7,400 remaining, one spot left for a DraftKings GPP, Kroom or Rozenstruik.
I think it would have to depend on knowing the rest of the lineup, right? Like, you don't want to put Kroom or Rozenstruik against their opponent in the same lineup because in a single bullet, you're probably not wanting to stack. But if we're talking about just straight up and he doesn't have his opponent, the opponents, I'd probably say that I do like Kroom, and I wonder about the odds in this situation. It could be more about recency bias of looking at what, Alex Caceres has done against Chase Hooper, Austin Springer, secured some victories over some pretty low-level talent. I do think that Kroom should be the slight favor. I think it should be closer than what the odds are saying.
Next up, Miles says, can the winner of Alex Hernandez-Thiago Moses fight score enough in a decision?
Yeah, I think so. I think so, because I will say that Hernandez and Moises, they both bring it, right? And it's more so on the Hernandez side. Like, he really just presses action early, and you worry about him tapering off, but at least he's going to bring it. Like, I want guys out there that are going to fight for it and not dance around. Like, Alex Caceres, 8,800, he's a good play. He's fine. But I like the Kroom side because I know how aggressive and how bad he wants it. And that's the type of guy I like to roster. So I do think a guy like Hernandez is fine. Moises can capitalize on a fatiguing Hernandez possibly.
I mean, I think that when we think about the path to victory for Thiago, I think we think about potentially, the wearing down of Alexander Hernandez, which we have seen in previous fights. Now, we did not get a chance to see that in his last fight because that was kind of one of those questions of, okay, you're now a new team in Factory X. What happens if this fight hits the second and third round? And one of the things we always want to do is we do want to present both sides of the fight here. Yeah. And I think the general thought on Thiago is, A, using his jiu-jitsu to get the victory, but B, potentially a worn down Alexander Hernandez, in the third, say, second, third round.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I also think, like, thinking back on your conversation with John Castaneda, right, when he fought Eddie Wineland, his opponent is coming off of a knockout loss. Now, Alexander Hernandez is not coming off of a knockout loss, but he has been knocked out in the past. Drew Dober, Cowboy Cerrone. When a guy has been knocked out, it's always good to chin check somebody because you want to see how they're going to absorb the strike, how they're going to deal with it. Does that kind of bring back bad memories and they start to panic and then knock themselves for the rest of the fight? Or do they get rocked from it and you can follow up with whatever your attack is? So I think, like, it's important to notice how fighters have lost in the past and if their opponents can capitalize on it. I don't know too many people that would say Moises has a shot at TKOing him, but he's not a horrible striker. He's a decent striker, and it is MMA. And especially when you have a fighter so worried about the takedown, Hernandez can take him down. Moises can take him down. It does open up your striking quite a bit.
Well, just think about a couple of weeks ago, Rodolfo Vieira getting submitted by Anthony Hernandez. That's a submission due to exhaustion. Because we all know, Rodolfo Vieira, his BJJ credentials. So that's something to take in there. Who is a better play, Grisham or Moses, as a cheaper option? I feel like a Grisham win has a higher ceiling than a Moses win.
I would agree with that because of the grappling, and that Jacoby's so talented striking, and if he is put on his back, we have seen him put on his back early in his UFC career and in his entire MMA career. Like, he's not the same fighter there, and Grisham does have 40 fights under his belt, so I guess I'll lean towards Grisham there.
With only 9 fights now, is Dustin Jacoby at MVP on FanDuel worth a look? Simple yes.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he's got leg kicks, volume striking, good quality striking. I do worry about the cardio for both of these guys, especially if he has to defend takedowns from a good, talented fighter in Grisham.
Of course, be sure to follow us on Twitter at Awesemo_com. Help us get to 30,000 followers on Twitter. And for our followers, we do have a giveaway going on. We're going to give away 30 free weekly passes. So head over to our Twitter account at Awesemo_com. Also, be sure to check out that pinned tweet for that giveaway we have for tonight's UFC Vegas number 20. Sean Smith says, would it be wise to fade the main event in a single entry GPP to get different or too risky? Thanks, guys, for the content. Much appreciated. Sean, appreciate you checking us out, man.
Yeah, appreciate you, man. I will say that avoiding the main event, especially a heavyweight main event, is a perfect way to get different, right? Because you have to view the fights in the same scope that the majority of the community does. And that's how you take down GPPs, is you're on somebody when nobody else is, or you're off somebody when everybody is on them, right? Like, simply put, nobody's looking at this heavyweight bout thinking, hey, it's going to be a staring contest between the two, like a Francis Ngannou, Derek Lewis, or that it's going to be stretched out over 5 rounds. So avoiding it is definitely a way to get different and to take down a GPP tournament. I don't hate it, but I do think that Gane's a great play.
Warren asks, he goes, does a short slate now change your strategy for constructing a cash lineup? Focus more on 4+ wins versus looking for the most likely finishers.
Yeah, agree. I try to get those 4 wins. Try to be as safe as possible in cash. That's always the build. Try to be safe. Take as minimal risks as possible to ensure a high point total. And cash is pretty easy. Cash is pretty easy for all sports, and it's not exciting, but it does build your bankroll. Jason, we have 300 people tuning in for UFC Vegas 20. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you guys could just hit that like button for us, get us over 100 likes. We really, really appreciate it. Drop your questions in the chat, and we'll get right to them.
FanDuel cash question over here. Surreal Gane and Alexis Davis versus Jimmy Rivera and Montana De La Rosa.
Ooh.
I feel like the Rivera De La Rosa side is a safer play for cash, where Surreal Gane's got a very high ceiling, where Alexis Davis, if she's able to get takedowns, able to make this a grappling game. I would say that if you're looking for the safe option in terms of cash, I'd probably slide Rivera De La Rosa.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You're the FanDuel boy, so I can't hate on that analysis at all. I actually agree with it 100%.
Next up over in our Slack account, he says, if all the favorites win on this short slate, who are the 2 likely highest scoring losers under De La Rosa?
I love the questions, man. You guys are sharp. Okay. The 2 highest scoring losers under De La Rosa. So let's think about it. We have Grisham, Cachero, Moises, Davis, Krylov, Rozenstruik. I think that Grisham would be one in a loss that could score decent based on takedowns. But as far as like winning the fight, it's got to, well, he said if they lose, it's got to be Davis and Grisham because of the takedown ability, no?
Yeah, that's where I was leaning towards there. Bill says, in the late DK contest, can the main event be stacked?
I haven't even looked at that contest. So it's very difficult to – I find those captain contests to be quite difficult, especially because you're dealing with a bunch of just the main card, essentially, and having to pick some fighters or a fighter that you don't like. A stack. Well, since it is on the main card, if you were going to stack anything, I think I'd say stack the 135-pound fight between Rivera and Munoz in that captain contest, because lighter guys, more chance of it going the distance, more action because their energy is just through the roof.
Who will have more significant strikes over 3 rounds, Dustin Jacoby or Sabina Mazo? I'm guessing that's a monkey knife fight question.
That is a great question, though. Damn, you guys are good. I will say Dustin Jacoby. And the reason I'll say that is because I do think that Alexis Davis gets her down or clinches her against the cage. She's a wily veteran. And but it's close, man. It is close.
I tell you, I was initially thinking Mazo, but then hearing you talk, I go, yeah, that's spot on because of how much Davis will likely be in the clinch. Because the question was significant strikes. In the clinch, they're not going to get you a credit for a significant strike. So, yeah, I'm with you on that one, Pete. I was definitely on the other side of the start, but after hearing you, this is why I like to listen to you because sometimes we have a way of kind of talking each other into the other side of this one. Let's see here. We already answered that question. Miles says top 2 fights to avoid besides the female fights. I at 9 fights, I just don't think you can avoid any fights.
Yeah, it all depends on your approach, right, to the slate. Like, how many lineups are you planning? Like, what type of field are you in? Are you in a single entry? Because if you're in a single entry and you're looking at trying to find 6 fighters to get you 100 points, then I don't hate what he said. But I do think that there are some good spots for the female fighters on this card. I mean, women's MMA is like a flip of a coin on the low end, right? Like the top end, like Amanda Nunes next week. Like we're confident in that. But like armbar from guard, getting reversed any given night. I do think that De La Rosa is interesting, and I will say that Mazo's interesting as well. I mean, I think the Hill and Yoda fight was probably the least interesting of the of women's MMA on this card, just from a finish standpoint.
Wait, you mean you don't like a 14-1 betting favorite next weekend, Amanda Nunes?
Oh, I love her. I love her.
I am. We were joking about it on Thursday, but yeah, I'm interested to see how DraftKings does, salary that fight because that's going to be very much Valentina Shevchenko-ish when we're talking about what the salaries are. Thoughts on Dustin Jacoby for cash on DraftKings?
I love Dustin Jacoby, right? Like he's turned his entire career around. He just needs to stuff the takedown. It's not like Max Gershon is some unbelievable wrestler. He's a good wrestler and he's well rounded. But I do think that he might have lost a step. He is 36 years old. He does have 40 fights under his belt. He just missed weight. He didn't really look that good in the UFC. I mean, short notice in his debut, and then fighting, I forget the guy's name, but the guy that literally goes out there, has 30 seconds of a gas tank, and then just folds. But Max Gershon hasn't really lived up to that record or the hype outside the UFC in the UFC. So I like Jacoby cash, GPP, all that.
I mentioned a question I got right before the show on Twitter from Sean saying Hernandez or Jacoby FanDuel cash.
FanDuel cash. I think it would be Jacoby, honestly, just because of, he's going to defend a few takedowns, and on FanDuel it makes sense.
Yeah, I kind of wonder, is Thiago Moses a guy we should be looking at in terms of a potential loser in a fight that could end up in a optimal lineup if we're talking about 9 favorites all win tonight.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. And I think we'll see some really weird lineups. I think you have to target more than one underdog in your lineup in order to get unique.
Yeah. Another one related to Dustin Jacoby, also in DraftKings cash, Dustin Jacoby or Ronnie Lawrence.
I don't hate Ronnie Lawrence, and I like what he showed on the Contender Series. I just feel like the public in general is just going to really favor Lawrence. It's a close fight. He looked great on the Contender Series, but Cachero didn't look good in his debut because he took it on a couple days' notice against Jamal Emmers up a weight class. So I think that Cachero is talented and he can definitely compete, but Lawrence does have that takedown city potential, and I marked him. I put a star next to his name as far as like my takedown guys. Like he had 12 takedowns or 15 takedowns in his Contender Series fight, and Cachero was just taken down 5 times against Jamal Emmers. So despite me saying all of that, I view Jacoby as a safer player than Lawrence. So I would still side with Jacoby.
Of course, I appreciate all the questions we're getting here. Be sure to keep lining those up. We'll be live for another 15 minutes here on Awesemo before we'll lead you into NBA Deeper Dive coming up here at the top of the hour. Of course, if you are not subscribed to Awesemo right here on YouTube, you got to hit that subscribe. Also, hit that notification bell so you know when a new show is live on the channel, and really would appreciate if you would leave a like. But big thing, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you know when a show is on live on the channel or it's already been taking place. Maybe you want to check out the NHL strategy show that was on right before us, so be sure to hit that subscribe button. Trey was one about the best DraftKings captain play, so I just pulled it up here on the phone. So you got Ankalaev at 15,000, Ciryl Gane 14,001, Sabina Mazo 13,500, Alexander Hernandez 12,600, Bueno Silva 11,700, Rivera 11,100, so on and so forth. I might, if you don't want to spend up for an Ankalaev or say a Ciryl Gane, because obviously that's going to affect your roster construction, I might look at a guy like Alexander Hernandez at 12,600.
Yeah, sneaky play, man. Sneaky play. I do like that.
Yeah, I mean, because Ronnie Lawrence is not a part of that. Justin Kobe's not a part of that contest, so that kind of takes out two fighters that I do tend to target in a lot of mine. Who would your cash core be on FanDuel? Now, look, so when I was putting one lineup together on FanDuel today, I wanted to have Ankalaev in there, but at $23, it made roster construction very tough. So to me, I think you got to be looking at Jacoby, Lawrence. I really think in terms of FanDuel cash, I think you got to have someone in Alexis Davis, Sabina Mazo. I think you got to make a stand on that fight. You sit there and say, hey, I think Alexis Davis can get this fight to the ground, or you believe that Mazo is going to be able to stop those takedowns, keep it on the feet, keep it at range, and land up some takedown defense points along with strike points.
Yeah, I love it, Jason. I think FanDuel approach on a small slate like this could be one in the middle, right? Like if you can win a contest by selecting a lot of fighters in that middle grouping where you got a lot of people going high and low. That's common, right? Everybody wants a LeBron, a Kawhi, or Anthony Davis, and then they try to fit in, it's the stars and scrub approach. And a lot of people carry that approach into MMA, and it does work because a lot of times favorites in MMA, it turns out, but guess what? One shot changes it all. I think it could be one in the middle. So I would focus on FanDuel in the middle salary range. I think that's where you can win it.
Richard asked about the ETA of the main event. That main event will probably go off sometime in the 10 p.m. Eastern time hour. Just kind of depends on how the rest of the fights go. I do think that we're going to get a lot of promos for UFC 259 during the broadcast with a 5-fight main card. Ciryl Gane or Sabina Mazo, DraftKings single entry GPP. Here's my thought. I think the higher ceiling is Gane, but I feel like if you want to try to separate yourself, go on the Mazo route.
Yeah, perfectly said. I mean, you do have 5 rounds to work with Gane, 86% finish rate. I do think that with Mazo, you're hoping she keeps it on the feet the entire time and just accumulates a ton of strikes, like 300 strikes thrown or something like that, so you can get a boosted point total. But as you have seen, as I have seen, and everybody else listening to this show, if there aren't knockdowns and it's not an extremely high volume, striking affairs just kind of like are lost in the pack. And it's like, yeah, they scored 89, 93. Like it's not that 100 that we need.
Yeah. Favorite underdog to win by knockout or submission?
Well, I think the favorite underdog to win by knockout, I don't like think it's going to happen, but it's got to be Rozenstruik, right? 91% finish rate. If he wins, that's how it is.
The other one I would look at is if he going to win, I believe it will likely be by knockout, Vince Cicero.
Really?
Look, I like Ronnie Lawrence, but look, Vince's path to victory is keeping the fight on the feet, stopping those takedowns, wearing down Ronnie Lawrence as the fight goes on, and then potentially maybe a late second, sometime third round TKO.
Wow, that is. I don't hate it. I mean, does have a ground and pound victory back just before his fight against Jamal Emmers. in his MMA debut, has a TKO. I mean, he definitely has the skills. He has the boxing. If he's able to keep it on the feet, yeah. What happens when wrestlers can't take you down? They get really fatigued and are susceptible to getting cracked. So I don't hate it.
Jay over in Slack says, who's that really low-owned, expensive fighter that is not getting enough attention? Look, when it's 18 fighters on a fight card, I feel like everyone's getting attention. There's not really someone that's going to slip through the cracks.
Well, there's only two 9,000 options now, Jason.
I would, maybe it's Alex Caceres. Maybe I think that's probably the guy we're not talking enough about, just because, we're always looking for that under 8,000 fighter on DraftKings, and there's not a ton of favorable options this week. So I think for me, probably the guy that I'm not looking at enough would be Alex Caceres. But I just wonder, can Alex get a stoppage?
Yeah, I mean, like, Alex can get a stoppage over low-level talent, but Alex can definitely get a stoppage via strikes based on his creativity, but submissions due to a reckless fighter. And Kevin Kroom is literally like the Tasmanian devil at times, and he needs to calm down. In a way, he has some similarities to Derek Minner, but he's like the stand-up version of him, right? Like, he just throws caution to the wind and has been finished a lot in the regional scene. I don't foresee it happening, but Alex Caceres has, he's defeated Sergio Pettis, right? Like, he's 12-10 in the UFC. It's a completely different style of a fight, but he does have some pretty notable wins in the UFC.
2014 was when that win against Sergio Pettis. As I mentioned on the strategy show, Pete had not had his second pro fight at that point. Of course, so if you ever do miss any of our shows, they are a part of the Awesemo Podcast Network. Just go to awesemo.com/podcast to listen to your favorite show. The only shows that are not a part that are live before the lock, and leave a 5-star review, and you will be entered in for a chance to win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Good luck. Of course, we'll be here for about another 9 minutes taking your questions. Sam, how much salary left on the table to get unique on DraftKings?
Anything left over is fine. Jason, Yair Rodriguez, Alex Caceres lost a split decision to him. Mm-hmm. That's crazy, right? Granted, that's 2016, but that is crazy.
And think about how close Charles Rosa was to get a win against Yair Rodriguez in Mexico a couple years ago.
Yep.
So, yeah, it definitely happens. Miles says, if Jacoby and Lawrence win by decision, who scores higher on FanDuel?
On FanDuel would probably be Jacoby, because he's going to defend some takedowns.
Yeah. Hernandez or Mazo DraftKings cash?
Ooh. I think Hernandez. And the reason I would say that is because we did see improvement in his game. Whereas Sabina Mazo, yes, she's fighting an aged veteran, Alexis Davis, who's 36, but Alexis Davis has some crazy wins in her career.
Davis could be a very popular play in cash.
I think she will be. I really think that Montana De La Rosa and Alexis Davis will be two of the most popular underdogs out there. Great paths to victory against a relatively untested UFC fighter.
Joe says, so you wouldn't stack Ankalaev Krylov in a DraftKings GPP? My answer is no.
I would say no. 9,300, you're hoping he knocks him out or gets a really good score, because Krylov would have to do a lot, and then Ankalaev would still have to pay off that salary. So I would say no.
Who's the pivot fighter now that can be in the optimal?
Pivot fighter. Well, if we looked, Hill was 9,200. So if you're pivoting off of her, I think the common pivot will be to Ankalaev at 9,300, but I don't think that she was a common choice. Yoder's at 7,000. So I think that you will see two things happen. At the high end, you'll see Ankalaev and Gane be more popular, as expected. But I think that Rozenstruik at 7,200 will also be popular now, since Ashley Yoder's kind of off the table.
De La Rosa or Chichero, last spot FanDuel single entry. I think the safe answer is De La Rosa, but I think if you want to separate yourself from the field, it's Vince.
I like it. Jason is on the Vince Cachero. I will tell you that when I originally did my crunch, I was getting a lot of Vince Cachero, just because it made you, spend, you could get to a lot of fighters. So I don't hate it. And at the 135-pound weight class, he's going to have a motor. He should be competitive throughout.
How would you rank these in terms of FanDuel cash? It says just as punts. Understand that loss is likely. Kroom, Davis, Moses.
Just as punts, rank them.
I would rank it Kroom 1.
I'd say it exactly how you said it.
Yeah. I would probably agree with you in terms of that.
Kroom, Davis, Moses. Yeah.
Yeah. Does Grisham missing weight make you concerned for his gas tank ability to get to the mat and stay there? I'm thinking of going heavy on Jacoby.
It's hard to know because you're not a part of the camp, and it's also hard to know when he didn't really show like negative side effects on the scale. Like we've seen fighters up there trembling, right? Like you've seen fighters trembling. You've seen fighters need assistance off the scale. They look not, they don't look so hot up there. He looked like a guy that's 210 pounds that just missed weight. And he's like, yeah, I'm disappointed. My first time out of 40 fights, it kind of like blows my mind. So maybe it is for a competitive edge. We'll have to see.
Who are you most confident hitting 100 DraftKings points?
It's going to happen, but most confident?
For me, it'd be Ankalaev.
I'll say Gane.
Yeah. With only 9 fights, what's your guess on ownership percentage for the lowest owned fighter on DraftKings? Probably
20.
Low 20% range.
Yeah.
Due to 3 fights being off, how much salary left will be optimal now to be able to be unique? I don't know how. I mean, look, I think you have to go into this card just understanding if you have the optimal lineup, you're going to probably chop it with 20 other lineups or 20.
At least, Jason, yeah. 20? Man, we're going to be chopping with thousands, but it's okay. I mean, we're here. We're dedicated. We have 375 dedicated people tuning in. Hit that thumbs up for us. Get us over 100. But I will say that, like, leaving more than $500 on the table will completely make your lineups unique. You know that people are going to try to get the 49.5, the 49.6 and up in their lineups.
Yeah. Who has the most upside on the slate outside of Ciryl Gane?
Who has the most upside? I think Ankalaev has that crazy KO upside. I mean, like, if there's a guy on this, there's 2 fighters that I view that can really get crazy Francis Ngannou knockout bonuses, and I think it's Rozenstruik and Ankalaev.
Yeah. Get a couple of here before we get out of here for NBA deeper dive. Munoz or De La Rosa on DraftKings?
De La Rosa.
Is it a bad idea to pick Gane and Rozenstruik in the same lineup?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it either. Blaster mentioned about Kroom's last fight being overturned due to a positive marijuana test. Yeah, that's true. And this is just reality. When a fighter steps up on 24 hours notice, I think you got a 6% chance that they may not, pass a marijuana test. Just because, I think if you polled gyms, 7 out of 10 fighters.
I've trained with a lot of UFC guys, a lot of high-level Bellator guys. Everybody's smoking. I'm like the only guy that doesn't.
Lori says, what fights do you see as a true 50-50 tonight? Munoz Rivera is the one I would point to.
I'd say Bueno Silva, De La Rosa.
Sean says, is it just me, or is this the most volatile card in a long time? Seems to be no clear-cut choices for at least me anyways. I think it's the fact that there's only 9 fights, but I think there's also fights that you can see very clear paths to both fighters.
Yeah, agree.
By the way, Jared, there's no way Pete's going to make 135.
Who? I need to go to 135? Yeah, hell no.
Jared said Pete needs to go to 135 and fight Jan. I don't think there's any way we'll ever see Pete hit 135 on a scale.
No, I graduated high school 133 pounds. That's it.
Yeah, you don't necessarily want to have to hit 146 on the scale at this point.
So. I don't think it would happen.
So, yeah, but we do appreciate everyone tuning in here. Good luck tonight in your lineups. Coming up next year on Awesemo.com will be NBA Deeper Dive as they get you ready for tonight's NBA action. For the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr., I am Jason Floyd. Good luck, and we will talk to you next week for UFC 259.